very excited about today. A fully fledged international airport is terrific news for the region, but it doesn't come without its challenges, and one of those challenges is the flight paths. The paths from which planes come to land and to which they go when taking off. And it's vitally important that this issue, which obviously has been a topical one for the local community, culminates in discussions like we will have today. It's vitally important we have the right people around the table, all coming here with an open mind and an open spirit of collegiality. We need to make sure that this round table serves its purpose, really, which is to have people swap notes, be fully informed, and it's an opportunity for Airservices Australia, to whom I'm very grateful for agreeing to come up today, and the Noise Ombudsman will also be here in an observatory capacity, to hear what the local community have to say and for those notes to be swapped. So delighted about this opportunity, and I'm really optimistic that we can have a very open, transparent dialogue about the flight paths, as well as an opportunity for Airservices Australia to present what they've been doing, and to also hear from the community and any other key stakeholders.
Are you hoping there'll be some alternatives put forward?
Oh, look, there's no doubt that where there are alternative flight paths, now is the time, this is the moment for those to be tabled. I remain optimistic that people are here for the right reasons, really in a spirit of friendship and wanting to make sure that the right resolutions are found. Indeed, it is the day for people to put forward their options. Airservices has a very clear mandate to be assessing potential flight paths within the constraints, of course, of the EIS. That's what they're to do, and today's a wonderful opportunity for people to put forward their alternative solutions where they please.
It's important to accept that perhaps not everyone is going to be happy at the end of the day, and that this is something that we'll have to push forward eventually.
Look, this is part of a process, and I think anybody who really says yes to a round table, I believe, really wants to make sure this is a productive, positive discussion. And my hope is that everybody who leaves this room today will leave saying, well, we're one step further ahead, and we're all more informed, and everyone's on the same page.
It's been organised?
Yeah, look, we've been meeting with Airservices prior to the release of all their previous reports as well, so we're happy to be here again today to see what they're going to present in terms of their findings.
What are you hoping to get out of today?
Well, we're hoping to see if there are any alternative paths that were presented during the community consultation and what they had considered in terms of their final design.
It's still a very, very big concern.
It is a big concern. There's a large number of communities that are going to be affected, and they've all got different needs, so yeah, it's a big concern.
What are you hoping doesn't happen today?
I'm hoping that today it doesn't result in these are the final flight path designs and we're going to lodge them in the near future. Yeah.
What would that mean for residents?
Well, it would mean that that the newly affected residents weren't really consulted properly or with enough time to understand what the impacts would be, and they'll just be subjected to new noise.
Would you be happy if whatever's presented as the final flight paths affect as few people as possible?
That's always been our aim, yep. We've been pushing for a stakeholder engagement panel rather than putting a single line on a map, because there are so many communities that are affected and they all have different needs, and we need to address all of those needs for those communities.
Look, today's a great opportunity for various interested parties to consider the issues with regard to the airport expansion project. There are obviously resident groups being represented, which is really important given the very poor nature of the consultation process.
What was your criticism of the consultation process? What is that?
Look, there are a number of criticisms that have already been aired, and there are more that will be aired today with regard to the consultation process. But fundamentally, there were many people who living under the flight paths who weren't informed about the consultation process. The other problem we have is that, of course, since the EIS occurred in 2014-15, about a third of the population has actually changed over. And that means there are many people who are only coming to this issue now who weren't aware during the 14-15 process. But also there's a whole lot of issues, and they were very evident during the community meetings where it was asked how many people, for example, had received the supposed communique by post with regard to the consultation process, and only a handful put up their hands at all of the community group meetings. Out of hundreds of people, there were less than a dozen that had actually received the information.
Mayor, why wasn't Noosa Council, why didn't they get involved in the process at the get-go, at the early days when they were asked?
You're talking about 2014-15?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they declined to even have any input. Why involved now, but not then?
So the 2014-15 EIS process was before, in fact, the airport had been funded, the expansion project, and in that regard, it was very much focused around should there be an expansion, where should the runway be, etc. And therefore, a lot of residents, in fact, didn't get engaged at the time because it was still in the hypothetical. Now, of course, it's very much a reality, and that means that more people have realised that this is going to come to fruition. At the time, Noosa Council had only just de-amalgamated, and the decision was made that there were both benefits and issues with regard to the airport expansion for Noosa residents. On the one hand, obviously there are going to be economic benefits, and on the other hand, there was going to be impact on residents. There wasn't a strong movement from the residents at that time, again, because it wasn't necessarily a reality. It was still in the hypothetical at that point.
Do you accept that even with new plans, there are going to be residents that may not be happy with the results? Or alternately, do you think there is a way to make sure that all residents in your Noosa area are happy with the result?
I think the first thing that has to happen is there has to be proper consultation. Residents get upset when they feel like they're being taken for a ride and not given all the information. And that's the situation we have at the moment. It's no wonder they're upset, because the information has been very poorly delivered and often conflicting.
Are you hoping that this meeting will basically get all that information onto the table?
This meeting, it depends how it's chaired really as to how the meeting progresses. Initially last week when we met with Airservices Australia, we were under the impression that there wouldn't be an open opportunity for discussion. Since the intervention of Ted O'Brien's office, it seems that that opportunity will now occur, and I look forward to a free flow of information between the various parties around the table.
I just hope there's a really good flow of information, answers to some of the questions that have been outstanding, and that we can actually come to a really good resolution on behalf of all the communities involved.
You certainly have a lot of people in your electorate area who are very concerned about the proposed flight paths.
Very much so, and I think it's been very much about the consultation process and the flaw within that, and that's what's been felt. Not being able to get that extension to be able to really get those answers, of course, has created a lot of angst in the community. So I think today is that opportunity to get those answers, and looking forward to it.
What's the basis of a good outcome as far as you're concerned?
I think the basis of a good outcome is to have all the information, and for that then to be able to be digested. This is a highly technical and quite complex situation, especially when you're relating to EISs and AEISs, etc. You're talking about a community, they don't have expertise in those areas, so the simplicity of being able to get answers to their questions is paramount. And I think once they have those, and then to digest them and be able to come back to the table, and I think that's what's been asked from the start.
If one of the outcomes was a total re-prosecution of this sort of stuff, are you happy that the Sunshine Coast would have to foot that bill for that? I mean, are we at that point?
I don't believe we're at that point. I think we need to get through today and get those answers and for the community before deciding whether. I'm sure everyone's in agreement. We don't want to, halt the process. There's not, from the community, everyone understands this is a really important addition, what it will bring to our communities, but those questions and the impacts, because they just haven't been answered to their satisfaction, and that's what they're after.
Tim, what are you hoping comes out of today?
Well, we hope we can get all the information on the table. There's been an absolute plethora of information that's been out there over the last 5 years, and I'm pretty surprised that anybody today could claim that they didn't know this project was afoot. So get the information out there and see where we take it from there. But we need to get on with this. It's a very important project.
Regardless of whether people should have known or not, there are a lot of people saying that they didn't, that you're hoping today just wipes the slate clean and everyone is on the same page from here?
Well, everyone should have been on the same page for the last 5 years. You've only got to look at the geographical spread of the submissions that we received from the Friends of Lake Waiba, Oscar, who purport to represent organisations from right around the region. We did community sessions and EIS briefings in places like Yandina, into the Noosa Shire, right around our region. So, all things considered, TV, radio, advertising, distribution leaflets that went to thousands and thousands of people, plus the organisations, Sunshine Coast Environment Council, Oscar, Friends of Lake Waiba, that were all involved in putting in submissions and information sessions around the region. I think we should all be on the same page already. And if people haven't taken the opportunity to get involved over those last 5 years, I'd have to ask them why.
Tim, one of the things that Mayor Wellington said was back in 2014 that they didn't provide any feedback is because they thought the whole airport was just hypothetical. Do you think that's a fair call?
Well, I'm not sure what Tony Wellington was doing when he was a councillor for the Sunshine Coast Council if he thought it was nothing more than a hypothetical. It was a reality. It's always been a reality. We treat it as a reality. For anybody to think that we weren't treating it as a reality is absolutely a surprise and defies the work, the very good work that council have been doing on this project for a long time.
And do you hope there's any alternatives put to the table, Chair? And will you welcome that discussion if so?
We're happy for any information to be put on the table. In my personal opinion, I don't see how an alternative can work. To tell you the truth, all it's going to do is move the flight paths over someone else's house. And I think that might be the reason that they haven't put alternatives on, because they do realise that all it's doing is moving it over someone else's house. The flight paths that went out through the EIS that was suggested and the proposed flight paths now, there is a minimal difference in those, and we will show that today during our presentation. And so there's no surprises in any of the information that's available today compared to the early stages of this process.